Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. We've been talking about the power of visualization. And one of the stories that really drives home how powerful this is a man named Patrick Taylor down in Louisiana decided he wanted to make a difference in his community. He was a self-made millionaire in the field of oil, and he decided he wanted to give back. And so he adopted a middle school in an inner city. And this is a school where the dropout rate was 86%. 86% of these kids never graduate high school. And what he did is he offered the kids a deal. He said, look, if you'll stay in school and you get a B average and you have a 98% attendance record, which means you got to come to school, I will pay for your college education. Now, this gave them a sense of belief and hope. But he was a sophisticated guy, and so was the school. They knew that they had to do more than this because you'd forget that after a while. So what they did is they took all the kids on a bus. They took them out to a university. And they had them shadow a student, which meant they followed them around for a day. They went to classes with them. They went to the gym with them. They went to lunch with them. They went to the student union. They went to the library, all the different places they would go. And at the end of the day, they picked the kids up and took them home. Now, for the first time in their life, these kids who had never seen anyone go to college had a picture in their mind of what it looked like to go to college. So when we're talking about visualizing the result as if it's already done, one of the things that you might want to do is go put yourself in the position of what it would look like to be there. W. Clement Stone said to me, go down to where all the guys get out of the stock exchange and get in the limos, and go up and introduce yourself to them. Walk into the exchange, see what it's like, get a feel for it, get a picture in your mind. I tell people to go down to the Rolls-Royce place, if that's what you want to own, and sit behind the wheel and look your head out the window and wave. Take a camera with you, have the salesman take a picture of you, right? Take it home, blow it up to 8 by 10, put it on the refrigerator. Every day you see yourself in a Rolls-Royce. Well, he had these kids every morning when they came to school, the teachers would have them close their eyes and visualize being on that college campus. 5 years later, the dropout rate had gone from 86% down to 16%. It almost totally reversed itself. The power of a goal, the power of visualizing that goal. One of my friends is a woman named Glenna Salisbury. She's the president of the National Speakers Association. She tells a story of how she used this in her life. She was a person, she said, that was kind of down on herself at that time. Her dreams weren't all that coming true. She needed to rekindle some dreams in her life. And she had gone to a lecture and heard a man give a formula that said I times V equals R. Imagery times vividness equals reality or results, either one. And so she said, I want that reality. And she went home from that lecture all excited. I hope you'll do the same thing tonight. And she took out a notebook. And she picked 8 goals that she had for herself. And she took a picture out of magazines for each goal, and she pasted them in her notebook. One of them was a good-looking man. The second was a woman in a wedding gown and a man in a tuxedo because she wanted to get married. The third was bouquets of flowers because she's very romantic. The fourth one was beautiful diamond jewelry. Now, she's a very spiritual woman, but she said, Solomon had a lot of diamonds. Why not me? You know, he was in the Bible, right? She saw an island in the Caribbean with a sparkling blue water, a lovely house, because she wanted to have a house. At that time, she didn't. She wanted to be in a house with all new furniture, so she visualized that, cut out the pictures for that. And finally, a woman who had recently become vice president of her company, because there were no women vice presidents in her company, and she wanted to be that. Now, 8 weeks later, she's driving down a freeway. She's been looking at these pictures every day, closing her eyes, visualizing, just like we're teaching here. And she said, this guy pulls up in a Cadillac. It was a red Cadillac. She liked red Cadillacs. She looked over. Guy smiled at her. She smiled back. And she said, now I'm in trouble. He thinks it means something. So I speed up. He speeds up. I pull off to the right lane. He pulls over. I get off on the exit. He gets off on the exit. She said, I pulled over and I stopped, thinking he'd go on by. He stopped behind me. And she said, 8 months later, we were married. Now, she's got the husband, right? His hobby was collecting diamonds. And he said he was looking for someone to decorate. The first week that he met her, he sent her a dozen roses, and then every week after that, I think he sent her a dozen roses, is what she said. Then she says, we got the honeymoon down where? He says, let's go to St. John's in the Caribbean. She says, I never would have thought of that. Right? They had the tux and the wedding gown. She's got the gorgeous home with the furniture, because guess what this guy did for a living? He was a distributor for one of the finest East Coast furniture manufacturers. And within a year, she was vice president of human resources for her company. Now, I could tell you 100 stories like that because this thing works. You've got to use it, though. Now, let me tell you my own story, just so you can get a sense of that. When I first learned this material, I was in Chicago working for this man I mentioned earlier, W. Clement Stone. And he said, well, actually I wasn't working, I was taking seminars with him, just getting to a point where later I did work with him. And he said, I want you to set a goal that's so big that if you achieved it, it would blow your mind. And I said, what I want to do is I want to make $100,000 in 1 year. Now, I was a teacher in a public school making $8,000 a year, and I was getting $2,000 a year from this book I'd published as royalties, so I had $10,000 a year income. So this would be 10 times what I was making. I didn't see how that was possible, but I want to test the theory. So I said, that's my goal. And he said, here's what I want you to do. Go home, visualize the goal, internally and externally. So I took a $100 bill, I added 3 zeros to it, basically, and then I blew it up, drew it, and put it on the ceiling. Every morning I wake up, first thing I see, $100,000 bill. Then I had a little affirmation. I said, God is my infinite supply, and large sums of money come to me quickly and easily under grace for the highest good of all concerned, as I easily earn and invest $100,000 a year. And then I would go to work. Now, nothing happened for about 6 weeks. And then I was in a shower, and I had my first $100,000 idea. My mind went, you have that book. You get a quarter every time that book sells. If you sold 400,000 copies of that book, you'd make $100,000. The book was called 100 Ways to Enhance Self-Concept in the Classroom. It was a book for teachers. Now, I didn't know how to do that, but at least I had something I could leverage. Now, how many of you have ever been in your grandmother's bathroom? Can I see a show of hands? What magazine would you find in most grandmothers' bathrooms in America? Reader's Digest, that's right. And so I'm in my grandmother's bathroom, and I look over, and there's the Reader's Digest. Now, we talked about F's earlier, all those F's you don't see. And there was an F. It said 8 million readers in 17 languages. I thought, my gosh, if 8 million people read about my book, certainly they would run out and buy it, and I'd at least have 400,000 people that make my goal. So I called up the Reader's Digest. I said, I'd like to take an ad in your magazine. What's it cost? They said, you want to do it right? I said, well, I'm not interested in doing it wrong. And I said, what do you need to do is you need to have the right-hand placement, you know, not the right page, not the left. That's where the eye goes. It should be in color, not black and white. It'll stand out. Go all the way to the border instead of, you know, have a bleed, what they call it, so you don't see that white border around the edge. It's more graphic to the eye. Said, you better let us write the copy because you obviously don't know what you're doing. And I said, well, that's probably true. And he said we should have 6 repetitions, 6 months in a row, because that's what will get that repetition factor going and people will buy the book. I said, that sounds great. What will that cost? And he said, well, that'll run you about $108,000. I said, well, we won't be doing that. He said, why not? I said, number one, I don't have $108,000. I'm a school teacher. And number two, even if I did, the game I'm playing, I end up losing $8,000, right? So I'm at the supermarket about a week later, and what do you think I saw at the checkout counter? The National Enquirer, that's right. It said 12 million readers weekly. Now, there's another F. I'd seen the National Enquirer before. I'd seen the Reader's Digest before. But it had never, like, jumped out at me. It was in the background, like those F's you didn't see. And all of a sudden, I call up the National Enquirer. I say, what about you guys? And their ads were equally expensive and just more than I could afford. But about 6 weeks later, I figured, well, use the technique. I started visualizing myself in a Reader's Digest, easy to say with rented lips. I started visualizing myself in the National Enquirer. And all of a sudden, I'm at Hunter College giving a talk in New York, and this woman comes up, and she says, I'd like to interview you. I said, well, who do you write for? She said, I'm a freelancer, but mainly I write for the National Enquirer. And inside, I'm going, well, what took you so long, right? Well, she did the article, the book started selling more, and then my wife saw another F. She said, Jack, the bookstore sells the book for $6. They get to keep 3 of those. You only get a quarter. You should get more. Why don't we become a bookstore? I said, sounds like a good deal to me. So we started the mail order book service, selling one product, my book. And we had a little flyer we'd send out, and we'd take ads in parenting magazines. Well, then people started ordering the books, and my wife saw another F. She ordered something in the mail. Now, what do you get when you order something in the mail and you open up the box? Besides what you ordered, what else is in there? Catalogs and sheets of all kinds of stuff you can buy. And she said, look, we've already proven that they buy stuff through the mail on self-esteem. Let's send them more stuff to buy. So we started a little catalog. Eventually, it evolved into a 32-page catalog. We had over 100 products in it, and people started buying that stuff. I had to hire 2 high school kids to work after school to help us fulfill the orders. And finally, a lady came over from the University of Massachusetts. We were up in Amherst at the time. And she said, you know, we're having a counselors conference. If you could bring all your books over, we'll give you 2 tables. You can sell your books and keep all the profit. We said, hey, sounds like a deal. Had a lot of counselors show up from all over the state of Massachusetts, and that weekend we netted over $2,000. And I said to my wife, you know, if we could do that 50 weekends a year, that's a $100,000 a year business. Now, we did not make $100,000 that year. I think our income was something like $96,253. Do you think we were really disappointed? No, we were ecstatic. We were blown away. And then my wife says, honey, if it works for $100,000, do you think it'll work for $1 million? And I said, I don't know. Let's try it. So we started. You can buy a $1 million bill, like in the stores. They have these little things you can get. And we've got one. We blew that up and put that on the ceiling. And I started an affirmation, which is, I am happily depositing my $1 million royalty check. At that time, I thought it was going to come from the Guthrie-Rinker Corporation, who does all those infomercials with Tony Robbins and other people. But it didn't. It came from a book, the first chicken soup book. About 2 years into that, my publisher, Peter Vegso, sends me a check for $1 million. It was $1,130,691, but who remembers exactly, right? And it was so cute because he put a little smiley face in the signature, you know, for $1 million. And that was really exciting. And I'm only sharing this with you not to brag, but to give you the example of anything's possible. Now, that didn't happen overnight. That took several years from the time we started visualizing that till we got it. Bigger goals take a little longer sometimes. But if you'll do the visualizing I'm talking to you about, you can have anything you want. We did another thing. We took the New York Times bestseller list. We wanted to be #1 in the New York Times. And we whited out the book that was #1 at the time, and we typed in Chicken Soup for the Soul. And we Xeroxed that, and we put that up on the wall. And we started getting all kinds of ideas to do that. There was a computer company that wanted to up sales. And so they put video monitors on the corner of every hallway in the building. And as people would walk down, there would be this big monitor up there, and there would be a picture of the beaches down in Rio de Janeiro. And every time they would see this, they would look up and say, you could be on that beach. Don't you want to go there? So on and so forth. And everyone said, yeah, I want to go there. And pretty soon, their sales went up like 34%. Simply because they said, picture yourself on this beach. And when people would picture themselves there, how to become a top salesman, they started listening more, they were reading more, because they wanted that trip. I was watching TV up in Canada recently, and there was the Grey Cup, which is the Super Bowl of Canada football up there. And it was talking about a story about a guy who started missing all the passes they were sending him. And what the coach did is he took him aside and said, look, I want to show you a video of your 10 best pass receptions that you ever did. And they made a little video of his 10 best pass receptions. And they asked him to watch that 3 times a day. And within 3 weeks, he was catching every ball. I think in that game, he caught 2 touchdown passes. So this stuff works, and it can be used in every aspect of your life. Whether it's internally, you do it by closing your eyes, or externally, you do it by putting a picture outside of you. So basically, the key here is repetition. Remember, discipline of success? You want to look at this every day. Put it somewhere you can see it, whether it's that picture of you in the car you want, or a picture of you. One friend of mine, she wanted to be thinner. She cut out her head from a photograph and put it on top of Christy Brinkley's body. Okay? Stuck it on the refrigerator. But this will work anywhere. Another friend of mine took his scale, and every time he looked down, whatever number was there, he didn't like it. Right? He wanted to be like 30, 40 pounds lighter. So he took his ideal weight, let's say it was 185, and he got a piece of paper, wrote 185 on it, and glued it down over the top of the scale. So every time he stood on it, what did he weigh? 185. And what does he say to himself? Wow, I weigh 185. And that literally begins to create the structural tension that creates all the things we talked about and moves you toward the goal.